Thanks everyone. So welcome to the SwinLead Welcome Back League discussion panel. So we've got Jared and Danny over here. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, sovereignty was never ceded, and this is on behalf of the entire Swinburne Leadership Hub. Let's start with a quick introduction. So I'm Jonathan, I'll be hosting today. I'm the current design and marketing lead for Swinburne Leadership Hub. We've got Jared. Would you like to give yourself a quick introduction?
Quick, yeah, that being the operative word.
Quick.
I'm Jared, I use he, they pronouns. I am a student studying a Bachelor of Computer Science and a Bachelor of Games and Interactivity. Probably well known for a lot of the extra stuff that I do with the peer mentoring program, student partnerships, student ambassadors, and probably a few other things as well, including some clubs like Gender Agenda. I've been around. That's pretty much how I can summarize myself and who I am.
For sure. Yeah. All right, Danny, on to you.
Yeah, so I'm Danny. I'm the secretary of the Pop Culture Club. I'm the tech lead of the Leadership Hub. I'm also on the H Squad. And I'm also on the Math Society. So I think I'm trying to do as many things as Jared, but still trying to get there.
Trying to win up.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go, competition. No, really good stuff. Yeah, so I guess we'll start opening up the discussion right now. We'll just kick it up with just a really general question. So it's like, what's mental health to you guys? Like, on a personal level, what is mental health? How do you deal with it?
Mental health.
Yeah.
It's kind of
It's
a big pond.
Yeah.
One of which that I think we're still sort of discovering as a society.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we've got these panels going on as
Yeah.
well. For many, many years, we sort of looked at physical health as being like the epitome of like, make sure that you're not sneezing so you don't spread the flu around.
Yeah.
And we're pretty good in terms of physical health, but I think a lot that sort of leaves to be desired is our mental health, being able to understand that mental health is just as important as physical health. Your well-being and your headspace really sort of strives for how you can interact with society.
Yep.
And having poor mental health means that you have less desirable outcomes for what you want to do and where you want to go. So it's important to be able to take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think an important aspect that can't be avoided is, or shouldn't be ignored rather, is the connection between physical health and also mental health.
Yeah.
So it's not like just looking at, when you're looking at mental health, you need to take physical health into account as well. So I wrote down what mental health meant to me, because it's such a complicated issue or complicated area. So well-being is where I'm able to reach my full potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and that may not be for everyone. And then I'm also able to enjoy what I want to do.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. Awesome. No, that's really good. Thanks, guys. So yeah, I guess following on from you, Danny, how do you practice mental health? Ivan, you can also chime in.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways. So meditation is one, and I've been trying to get into that for a long time. I know that there's some sessions run at Swinburne. What's the program called?
Be mindful?
Yeah, Be Mindful. So that's really good. I've been to one session of that. What else? Oh, so playing sport, socializing, just making sure that I go to my support group if needed, but also reaching out to people and knowing when I can't handle something myself. So going to Swinburne Health on George Level 4, that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the way I've sort of been able to recharge my mental health, my energy, really has changed from time to time depending on the circumstances.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a pretty big gamer, it may not look obvious on the surface. I enjoy sort of taking the time out where I can sort of take myself away from the real world and put myself into a virtual space where I can feel like I can recharge and enjoy myself in something that's completely different. But considering that's sort of been the only thing I've been able to do the last couple of years of COVID, it's nice to be able to jump out of the world and find other experiences. So I like walking a lot. That's something that really sort of helps to energize me. I'll just go on long walks to 8 or 10 hours, starts to get dark, I'll then head back home.
Yeah.
But it's nice just to be able to encounter new things, discover new places, find new sites, and just recharge that way, because it's good for your physical health as well, but I think it also cleanses for your mental health. But I imagine, yeah.
Walking's been called like its own version of meditation, because you go out, your brain's like, oh, new things, like here's something fun and something new to focus on, and it will take you away from uni work or work and anything else that's stressing you out.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I was just thinking to a certain extent, it's about disconnecting as well. I mean, as much as we want to connect, we need to disconnect from the busy world and focus on ourselves. And that is one area that we can focus on in terms of our own well-being, to be able to disconnect and focus on something else rather than being on the same item for a very long time. So yeah, walking is definitely one of it, and there are many ways that there are actually walking meditation as well. So it's almost like mindfulness meditation, but in terms of walking meditation, it's about focusing on each and every step, feeling what's on your feet, and that's one way people practice walking meditation.
That's good. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so we're all students. We live the student life. So I don't know, how do you guys balance everything aside from what you guys have just said about like going out, taking like that mental like break, just going out for like a whole day's walk? How else do you like pace yourself throughout the day? Through the week, through the semester? We all know semester, like, it really is a challenge sometimes. We're like halfway right now and we're all feeling the pinch. So how do we pace ourselves better in your experience? You've been around for a long time.
I've been around for a long time. The difficult lesson for me is learning how to say no.
Yeah.
I'm very much someone that wants to be able to help everyone to the detriment of my own well-being. Which, as much as some people may see it as noble, you can't help anyone if you can't help yourself.
Indeed, yes.
I think also as well, like something that I really sort of praise is how much time I put into my studies, and it's not as much as a lot of people would expect. So I do 3 units per semester instead of the usual 4 for full-time students, which is possible for myself in my position as a domestic student. But I know that for international students, it's not as easy due to visa restrictions.
Yeah.
But being able to not have to put all my eggs in one basket and focus on just study, and have no time for focusing on my well-being and such, it's really advantageous to have that extra set of time. And that's something that we try and sort of strive for with the peer mentoring program, is that your well-being should take priority over anything else in your life, and then follow that by your studies, and then follow that by your work. Because well-being is foundational to the things that you do. Yeah.
Can't do anything if you're not well.
Yeah.
I think for me, following on from that is prioritizing what I'm doing, and being able to say no is basically that. Because people always ask, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? And saying no is such a new idea, I guess, just to me even. Like the past 2 weeks, I found that I was doing too much. And so I had to prioritize and say no to a bunch of things that I wanted to do. And so I think that can be really important. Also, just being organized. So I use Trello, which is a online organizational tool. Just making sure that I keep track of everything and what's coming up, what I need to do. I also use my calendar a lot.
Yes.
Those are like the main things that I do to balance, I guess, my mental health and also working.
That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
you got that.
No, I definitely really agree with both of you. Saying no and prioritizing, especially when it comes to us as students. What's most important, like Jared pointed out correctly, is our well-being and our education. And just make sure that do not overload yourself. I mean, there are plenty of opportunities out there, but as students, we also need to know how much we are able to commit ourselves to what we do, and try not to overcommit, because at some point we do know things are going to happen on all aspects of life. For example, mid-semester or final semester, and then there's some event going on with clubs or hubs and etc. So managing that at the beginning may seem easy when things are slow, but when everything seems to get busy, it may pose a challenge. And what I always say is, yeah, commit less, but do 100% on the things that you're doing rather than putting in 20% and not doing that well in all the things that you have committed to.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good.
I think with that as well, giving 100% to a few things instead of spreading yourself out so much.
Yeah.
That'll get you further in the long run as well, because then people will notice you more because you've done such a good job. Whereas if it's 50%, 20%, people are like, okay, they're in a leadership position and they did do their job, but it's like, if you put 100% in, then you're going to get noticed and it can further you.
Yeah, it's about excellence, right?
Yes.
Yeah, doing the best you can. No, that is good. So on that, I guess that's some pretty good, solid advice right there. Maybe we'll bring it to a more general point of view. If you think, so based on maybe like your experiences or like what's been happening, your circumstances, if you're like concerned about the state of your mental health, like what would you recommend? Like what actions would you recommend you take, whether that's at Swinburne or just in general?
Don't put it off.
Yeah,
I think we're all guilty of that actually, where we don't sort of recognize the signs because we dismiss it as, oh no, I'm just feeling a little under the weather today, I should be right later, or this bad thing happened, but something positive will be around the bend, like I'm sure of it. But I think that false sense of security sort of gives way to like a crumbling structure essentially. To put an analogy behind it, you don't sort of build a building with crappy foundations. You need to make sure those foundations are strong so the house can stay strong. So if you're covering up the cracks in the foundation with just empty promises of like, oh no, it'll be fine soon, or no, this is just a stressful period now, give it a couple of weeks and all of a sudden those cracks are a lot worse than they should be. So being able to sort of recognize that when the time comes, even if you feel like it's very minor, don't put off seeking help for your mental health, whether that's professional service, whether that's a friend, whether that's carving out time so you can spend an hour or two with friends or family at something completely different from work or study. Yeah, that's honestly, recognition is the highest priority and the first thing that you need to do.
Yeah, for sure. Danny, you got anything to add to that?
I don't think I have anything to add to that. But yeah, just using your support network or getting formal help.
Yeah.
I think Jared's actually made a note here, but normalizing that between groups and within support networks that people sometimes won't be okay. And making sure that it is a safe space, not only for yourself, but others as well within your group. And so just by doing that, you'll help others and you also help yourself.
Yeah. Really good.
I agree. I think it's about checking in with other people. Sometimes we, just like what Jared said, we may just brush it off as a cold or flu, or yeah, I'm just not feeling it. Probably it's the weather. But yeah, speak to your peers, speak to your friends, or speak to your group actually helps. Sometimes they are very good sounding board by checking in with them. It's like they may notice like, yeah, I noticed you've been tired for a while now and you seem to be a bit disconnected and things like that. So having a chat, having a discussion with people around you, they'll be able to point out what they've noticed, and it's definitely a good step or one of the steps to be able to acknowledge and see that happening. And again, just like what Danny mentioned as well, Swinburne at well-being at Swinburne is definitely the place to go to seek assistance as well. I mean, it could be just a casual chat with a counselor just to talk about something that you're feeling. And yeah, normalizing is really important. I mean, we are all entitled to how we feel. We are all different, and we don't operate in the same manner, and we don't react in the same manner to certain things. Some may be more severe than others in terms of what they are experiencing. So it's good to talk to someone, and ultimately, well-being at Swinburne is obviously there for us Swinburne students.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, so I mean, we've been talking about like what to do when we know that we're like going on a downward spiral, but how do you know when you're actually there? Because half the time it's like you just put it off, or it's like you just put yourself in denial or something. It's like I'm fine, but you're not. So how do you know when you're actually not doing okay?
It will happen quite spectacularly, actually.
Yeah.
Going back to Danny's point about having safe spaces to talk about these things, there was this time before COVID where I didn't really have that space, where I didn't feel safe to be able to discuss my feelings on certain issues.
Yeah.
Was coming out of a theatre rehearsal before our show season. So all these sort of ideas that I had got shot down. Every time I sort of made a suggestion, it would be brushed aside. I would get yelled at for certain things, and I didn't have anyone there to talk to practically.
Yeah.
And so that rehearsal wrapped up, I got in the car and I had a panic attack right there in my driver's seat.
Yeah.
Where I could feel that shortness of breath, my muscles were spasming. And after about 2 minutes, I was gone completely. I completely lost it. I had no feelings whatsoever except what I felt then. And that was the first time I've ever had a panic attack.
Yeah.
I cannot recall any time before that having that occur. But the fact that I didn't have that safe space meant that all these feelings got bottled up more and more and more, and it just burst.
Yeah.
And from that point, it was obvious that, yeah, I'm not okay whatsoever. But again, I didn't have the safe space to feel like I could go and find that support locally or in my groups. So it wasn't until after that where I thought, all right, I need to make the time to find something because I cannot function like this.
Yes.
Ideally, you're not in that circumstance. You can sort of see the signs beforehand. But for me, it was, no, it's going to go and it's going to go spectacularly.
Yeah. I'm in a very similar boat. So for me, it was like basically crashing and burning and then being like, oh, those are the warning signs. Okay, now I know what to do.
Yeah.
So I really think that until you realize what really gets to you and you unlock that, basically, it is quite dependent on people around you to simply ask, are you okay? How are you feeling? And then there is some responsibility within you to have that courage and also say maybe that you're not okay. So it goes both ways, and it's quite a difficult area, and I think it's still developing. Like how to recognize if people aren't okay is just so difficult.
Yeah, and especially like what can you do in that situation? Because there are going to be people out there that, as much as you might be a nice and caring person that wants to help them, they may not feel safe around you to express those feelings. And you've got to make sure that you're not trying to push the issue because you could make that worse for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just bouncing off Danny as well, I just want to say this: it's okay to not feel okay. I mean, we can't be okay all the time, right? And to answer Jonathan's question is, I've had experience where, just like what Jared said, it bottled up until at one point when I was speaking to someone about it, I just started bawling, and it was out of my control. I was just speaking as usually how I would explain a situation, and I started crying. It just came, and it happens. And another sign that I recognize as well for myself is being professional. I mean, I've been working for years now, so we do put on a professional front to a certain extent, and we show that we are okay, but unfortunately inside we know that we are not. But due to professionalism, whatever it is, we do put up this particular front. So one area that I could advise is just like what Danny said, when someone asks you if you're okay, that is a good way to reflect. Yeah, you may be saying you are okay or you are fine, and if you feel that you want to keep your vulnerability, yeah, it's perfectly fine. Just reflect on what your answer was, and does the answer truly reflect how you feel inside? Because occasionally on a professional front, I do tell people, oh yeah, I'm perfectly fine, but inside I feel very disconnected with what I said, and that's definitely a sign of there are certain issues that a person is dealing with, and it is about acknowledging it and seeking help. That is how it will help us in managing our well-being.
That's good.
I think something else is asking yourself if you're okay, actually. This is something I had to learn last year so quick. But actually just asking like if you are okay to yourself and then answering that honestly. The other thing is if you feel, I'm going to use the word like if you feel off or something's not quite right, don't dismiss that. Actually like look into that and see why you might be feeling that way. Because I know so many people that would just dismiss that off or bad feeling, and only for that to lead to something worse at a later time.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, thanks, Ivan, and both of you. I guess that leads me to another question, which would be like, we have all these like support structures that we put in place, given our experiences. What if those don't work for us at a specific point in time? What do you do then?
Don't give up.
Yeah.
I think we sort of see the trenches that we make for ourselves to protect ourselves, but if they don't work, that isn't a reason to give up. Like I sort of alluded to before, like games were sort of that foundational defense for me to be able to cope with situations, but even they couldn't work when that was the only thing that was there.
Yeah.
So I need to seek out new avenues to help myself. With professional services, that might just be finding a new counsellor, whether they're at Swinburne, whether they're in your local area, whether it's taking on something new or finding a new experience where that can become a new sense of support. There are different ways, and it's going to vary person to person. Not everyone likes talking about their feelings to others, but they like to perhaps put their feelings into expressions of art. There are those that like to write, or they like to draw. Those that like to actually do creative projects like working on games or something like that, where they can channel a lot of those feelings and stress into that, and that can be a sense of relief for them. But I suppose if for anyone that's watching, sort of take something away from it, whatever it is that you do isn't necessarily something that works for other people, and the same can be said for what other people do as well. Just be open to those possibilities of what could I try this out, maybe this will work. If not, try something else. And if you feel like you're in desperate need of help, just reach out to people that you need to, or call 000 and get that medical support immediately.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. That was perfect. Yeah, really just using your hobbies, I guess. If you need an outlet or you need to get away from people, hobbies are a great place to go if you need a bit of alone time.
Yeah. And on what Jared has mentioned, I actually heard this statement from one of the shows I watched. So basically, seeing a counselor is almost like dating a person, because you need to be able to feel comfortable with that particular person before you are able to open up and feel, be more vulnerable. And that's just our human nature, right? I mean, we don't show our vulnerability to everyone unless we feel comfortable about. So yeah, finding the right person. Apart from that, I do journaling to a certain extent to figure out what's going on with myself as well. So I would wake up, note down my feelings for the day, write down why I'm feeling that way, or figure out why I'm feeling that way, and look at it towards the end of the week. And in the long term, if you do it, you'll somehow figure out a pattern why you're feeling a certain things and what could be causing that displeasant feeling or pleasant feeling that you have, which is really helpful in terms of taking care of ourselves and understanding ourselves further.
That's really good, Ivan. Thank you for that. So yeah, I guess right now I'll bring it to something more relatable to us. We're all leaders within our own student space. We're all involved in clubs or anything. Danny and Ivan, you two are with me on the SwinLead Leadership Hub as well. So in a team environment, like how do you manage stress, other people, your own workload, how do you deal with that? Because you've always got like competing deadlines, you've got conflict management to deal with, all sorts of nitty-gritty stuff that we gotta tackle. So how do we go about that?
It's tough, and it really does depend on the environment that you're in. I think I'm quite lucky working with student partnerships that we're fairly aware and fairly woke about a lot of these issues that wouldn't have been brought up even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Being able to realize that no, you're not going to get 8 hours of productivity out of a person per day.
Yeah.
Because there's all these other factors that affect their lives, whether it's their family and friends, whether it's their health at the time. But even just being able to carve out some time just so you can actually be social with your colleagues.
Yeah.
We do that all the time. I mean, we probably do more talking than work, to be honest, but those are the moments that you enjoy out of a day and you want to get up out of bed and do and be a part of. Being able to facilitate an environment that allows for those casual conversations to happen, where people can take down their barriers, where they can feel open and honest with each other, then encourages for people to be able to reach out to you in a team if they feel that you're not feeling quite right, you're off your game. If people don't know who you are or how you sort of interact in an environment, they're not going to tell whether you're, good or bad or something else.
Yeah.
It's going to be a slow and generational process for this to affect all kinds of industries that are out there. But if you, as someone who is part of a team or facilitates a team, can sort of incorporate in a work environment to have those social engagements that are just off the cuff, and then to be able to encourage people to feel in tune with each other so they can help each other out when the time comes, that's going to lead to a lot of positive outcomes for everyone in the future.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
So I'm going to take more of a, the leadership top-down sort of approach. So it has been shown that like if you have a happier team and everyone's getting along and there are friendships, you're going to have a more productive team. So there's no reason sort of not to promote that, create events so that your executives or whatever can get together, just have a fun time. There's also just prioritizing people's mental health over their work is such a new and important thing. There's so many books being written at the moment that I'm reading quite a few of them, and it's just amazing to see the flip that I think is suddenly starting to happen is CEOs are actually realizing that if they focus on that mental health, they get more productivity. So people are happier and it's their aim. They are getting like more money. So everyone's happy at the end of that.
Win-win.
Yeah. So I think as a leader, it's really important to focus on that. And then of course, like you have an obligation to keep your team happy.
Yeah.
That's all I have to add to that, really.
Yeah, Ivan.
Well, that's very, very true. And managing people or being a leader, there's a lot of different ways. There are easy ways, there are harder ways, and personally, I feel the best way is to ask. And occasionally, I think Jared probably would have seen me asking. So, in a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing today? Danny, you probably have seen that as well. Jonathan, sometimes I do ask weird questions just to get this temperature check, what they call it, temperature check, to see how everyone's doing in the room, and then just uncover a little more about a person. And at the same time, this allows people to get to know each other better as well, on what's going on in their daily life, what's causing distress, what's building them up to a certain extent, and some of this can be very inspirational. And in terms of in a group setting, I think sometimes not only in clubs, hubs, or societies, we do have our teammates that we need to manage as well, especially like at work or in group assignment setting. So having a supportive network is amazing. I mean, for the peer mentoring program, yeah, I have Jared and Leah always supporting me in whatever I do, and some days are worse than others. Not because of them, but of course, like what Jared mentioned, we have other things that's going on in our life, and having them to build us up, or at least build me up, is something I'm really appreciative of. And for example, like in the hub, sometimes it does get a little hectic or busy. I do have Jonathan or Danny, Jay as well, and Emerson, a group of people in the hub or in the peer mentoring program that is able to stand by me in order to help me in that sense. So having a relationship built, having occasionally checking on each other does help manage the well-being of each other, and personally I find that helps me as well. And occasionally, I believe most of you have heard me saying, oh my god, I'm so tired. But yeah, and most of you were like, oh, what's going on? And there will be help offered, or advice to, oh, why not take it easy, go for rest and things like that. And I believe this is what is helpful, because these are little reminders. I say it little, but as little as they are actually a big thing in helping us to cope and get better as well.
That is really, really good, Ivan. And yeah, like Danny and Jared, those are really, really good as well. It does help to like see the difference between like your responsibility as being the leader of a group of people, and also being part of that group of people, like to have that synergetic like environment where you can actually facilitate those meaningful connections. And actually, because I mean, you are right, Danny, like if your team is not functioning and it's falling apart, it's not going to actually like go anywhere, and that will be detrimental to everyone. So that's actually a really key part. And yeah, Ivan, like you do all your check-ins. I mean, I do the same. I ask people like, how's your day been? And it's like, give me a word, like give me a word or a sentence, like how has your day been? Describe it. You can't say good, bad, okay. So it's like you got to get people thinking, because one word answers don't actually give you anything. It's like, fine. It's like, cool.
So many people just answer good.
Yeah, it's just like, how are you? Good.
And it's like, how are you really? It's like, I'm not too good. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah, red flag. Yep. Yeah, exactly. No, that's, yeah, cool.
I think a little question like, oh, all right, good. What do you mean by good? Does help people to unpack a little more. Well, generally, we do not want to a certain extent, we do not want to share our burden, but sometimes it's perfectly fine, especially when you ask more, people are more willing to be more vulnerable and share how they really feel, and yeah, that's why we are able to provide support.
I think we're definitely striving on cultural issues or generational issues when you sort of start to question a lot of those ingrained tendencies. When someone's like, hey, how you doing? It's like, oh yeah, good. It's like, yeah, well, it's automatic.
Yes.
Because we're sort of raised that way, and we go to school and we think that too. And even the media that we consume as well is very much oriented along those, those interactions.
Yeah.
But we need to sort of slowly challenge that norm to allow for people to feel more vulnerable with each other, so we can address the underlying issues that come from
right. Yeah, it's too run of the mill to just go like, it's too automatic, as you did say, right? It's just like, I'm fine. It's like, yeah, you're not fine. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's real. That's real. Definitely. So yeah. So within our groups and communities, like when you do have those situations as the leader of a particular body of people, how do you actively address or facilitate that environment where like you can actually like open up? Like, I mean, I think you did mention about like just socializing, or just like having the time out from like no work, just us, right? How else could we facilitate that as leaders in our respective groups?
I think for me and my part, I'm definitely someone that is the same in any kind of interaction that you've got.
Yeah.
I constantly say that I'm someone that is an introvert. I have a limited social battery.
Yeah.
So, you know, once that's depleted, I kind of shut down and do my own thing. That's generally how I am at home. But when I'm working with friends or colleagues or doing any work on behalf of peer mentoring in a very much leadership role, I like to think that I'm the same person. I can be approachable.
Yeah.
And I think that's important where, fair enough, if you need the time to yourself to do your own things and not put on that facade, that's fine. But having a conduit that allows for anyone who may know you slightly rather than a lot,
Yeah.
if they can approach you with the idea of who you are, that makes it more engaging for them to sort of go to you. Kind of like how we've all got heroes, people that we see like in media or in real life. We look up to them because we see one part of the persona.
Yeah.
But there are times when what we see isn't actually what we encounter in reality. I'd like to think that I'm someone that is the same regardless of where someone sees me. And having that approachability is then step one to the entire community.
Yeah.
That goes to your colleagues, then it goes to their colleagues, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's starting with who you are and how you participate in that environment is going to be how you set the standard for everyone else in that group as well.
Yeah, that's good.
I actually have a phrase for this. I call it authentic leading.
Yeah.
And so it's just about being yourself, being someone people can come to if they have concerns or questions.
Yeah.
But then obviously you need to keep that balance of, if you do need to tell someone or tell someone off or tell someone how they could do something in a bit of a better way, you do need to have that balance. And I think that only comes with practice, really. And it's just about setting that culture of your team and making sure everyone's happy. And that includes making sure that you are happy.
Yeah.
And I think a way through that is being authentic. So it's a bit of a loop.
Yeah, it is. No, it's true, because I mean, as leaders, we usually have the pressure of, like we have to perform, or like we've got like the team that's like depending on us for direction or something, right? So it's like, how can we like actually like keep that running? Ivan, have you got any points to add to this?
No, I would just say that it's about being tactful yet getting actions done. And I guess for our hub, what we've been trialing of late is the social circle, where we break down the structure to a certain extent where everyone's on the same level. Just share, just criticize. Well,
Criticize.
Criticize in a way that is helpful. So yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but do it mindfully and tactfully. And I think everyone deserves to know how they can improve better as well, improve themselves as well. And being more mindful and tactful in the word that we choose, not to attack a person, is usually really helpful. It's about I mean, leaders we are all about building each other up as well, right? So what we do is to provide feedback, positive criticism, I think it's called, and yeah, that would help people to understand themselves better and how they could improve as well. So yeah, sometimes it may be difficult to tell people off, but sometimes it has to be done to a certain extent just to keep up the productivity. But how you communicate that is the question, and that is definitely one challenge that most leaders would have in order to maintain the balance that everyone is talking about it today.
Yeah, no, that's good. I guess following on from this, one good question would be, as leaders, knowing that we have that responsibility, how do we actively and consciously actually be real when we know that like the team sort of does depend on us as leaders? Everyone needs a leader, direction. But how do we like as the leaders say that we are actually in need of help to the team? Like, how do we say that, yes, I'm your leader, but I need a break, I need time off, maybe I need like more support from you guys? How do you like grow that? Because that's a byproduct of building that good team culture, that team environment where like everyone has equal say, including you as a leader. You don't have more to bear in that sense, in this regard, but it's always that bit of that mental, it's just that predisposition that's like, I'm meant to be the one holding the ship together, like I have to be like on top of everything, when actually you don't. So it's like that, like how do you guys go around that?
Captain can't captain a ship if the crew isn't there.
Correct.
10 points? Yeah. I mean, we see a lot of this in media and even just traditionally where you have to be this leader that's emotionally distant from the crew to set that kind of persona. But to be honest, I think that concept of leadership is dead or dying.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable and open to the team lets them know that you're human, that you've got your own flaws, your own needs that need to be met. To put up this image of like a godly persona is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And again, spirals into more mental health issues along the way.
Yeah.
Not to mention cultural issues as well. As much as this sounds like a cop-out answer, being honest and being open with your team is the best way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds impossible, especially if you are in that kind of traditionalist environment.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to adapt. You're not going to get it right the first time, and that's completely fine. But being able to do these things slowly but surely at the pace that you feel comfortable with, and doing this in consultation with members of your team as well, is slowly going to open the doors to allow for them to realize that you are you, you've got your own capabilities and you have your own needs, as does everyone else on that team, and they are all valid.
That's good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in terms of how you go about it is, how to actually go about it is you would have to delegate your tasks out and say, okay, I'm going to be out for a week or two, and this is what I want done, and then delegate that to your team. Unfortunately, you probably won't realize that you're in that dip of mental health until you need that break. And so that might mean sitting down with people alongside you, basically at the same level within your team. Or it might just mean that unfortunately you may have to push through for about an hour or so, just so that you can plan what's going to happen. And then once that's done and people have asked their questions, then it's time for you to take a break and relax and recharge. If you can add to that, I'm not sure there's much else you can do there.
Well, the other thing as well is like, there are going to be times where you have teams that have these deadlines they have to meet for like external clients or so. What you need to do is factor in buffer time. For anyone that watches Star Trek Lower Decks, like you know what the go is. But as I was sort of alluding to before, you can't expect 8 hours of work per person per day. Factor in that you probably have someone working maybe 30 hours a week in a 38-hour week, where some of that time is dedicated to just off-the-cuff casual stuff, or people that need to just take a day off and recharge, they can do that as well. So, I mean, allow for that to happen. Factor in that, I'm not sure what the state of profanity could be in a situation like this, but if shit hits the fan, you need to be conscious and confident that you can have a day off and nothing bad's going to happen because you factored in that time for it.
It comes down to trust in the team as well, like building that culture and that sense of like security with the people that you've got, that they've got your back, you've got theirs. That's really important.
I think in terms of team structure as well.
I
see this everywhere of a Swinburne actually, is you will have a team of executives, and so having those people by your side and saying you need a break and building trust with those people and making sure that everyone's up to date on what's going on in the team, then you can step back quite easily because the others know what to do.
So it comes back to like communication.
All
that fun stuff, right?
All those soft skills.
The important stuff. I haven't got anything else to add.
Now, I'm just thinking, that the transparency really helps. Sometimes with the transparency, you don't even need to ask and people could tell, and they would even offer like, hey, I think that's just too much. Maybe you need to like go rest up a bit before you go on your next adventure. And we're all human. We are leaders. One thing I really enjoyed when I came to Swinburne was the professors themselves, or the conveners and the professors that I have. They admitted to us is that we don't know everything. We do have certain things that we do not know, but we will come back to you if you ask us. So similarly for us leaders, we need to be open about things that we are unable to manage to a certain extent, or there are certain things that we don't know. So for example, I have Danny to ask about tech, and I have Jonathan to ask about design and marketing. And of course, with Jared, I ask him everything about filming. And sometimes I do ask him how to be a better human being, which I always see that he is one. He inspires me. And this is where we improve ourselves as well. I mean, we only know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So yeah, if there's a question that comes your way or there's a task that comes your way, you're unable to do it or you're not too sure how to do it, ask around. Maybe, yeah, someone that is within the team, she, or they may not be a lead, but they have the answer to it, and I'm pretty sure they're more than happy to share their knowledge and ability, and that's the reason why, to a certain extent, we say everyone is a leader, because if you think about it, we are all leading our own life, making choices, making difficult choices, as a matter of fact, to make it work for us, and it shouldn't be any different when we're in a team setting.
Yeah, that's good. That sense of transparency, Danny, authenticity, that's really important and integral as leaders. Comes back to the Streisand effect. It's like the more you try to hide something, the more obvious it becomes. So it's like, yeah, if you've got something that you've got to deal with, then yeah, just put it out there. The team's got you, and yeah, that's really much the idea that we're trying to build here in terms of like well-being in leadership and like how can we be real with our people. I was going to wrap up with one question, with another question, but actually we've got a question from our audience. So we've got, do you think there's a community space where Swinman students could actually talk about mental health or well-being either casually or professionally? Or is it starting to come up now through advocates from key voices, either in the student space or media personalities who dedicate their time to make it normalized?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a space per se that encourages this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There are definitely plenty of organizations and programs and people like Page, one of the big advocates of it.
Yeah.
Where we can sort of normalize talking about mental health.
Yeah.
I think as a generation, we are fairly prepared now to bring this up in any kind of environment and have a good discussion about it.
Yeah.
So we don't need to have necessarily safe spaces because we can create our own safe spaces to talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to make that space, like go for it, like nothing's stopping you.
Yeah.
I think we're in a much better space talking about mental health now than we used to be.
Yeah.
And it's up to everyone, those that are watching this, to be able to facilitate that for the people around them.
Yeah, that's good.
I think you'd have to be careful with the space though, because the conversation that we're having right now, I feel is like really safe and it's supportive to everyone involved. But if you have a space for it and people are feeling down, there's a potential for this zone of just negativity when people are really going there for help. And so if anyone was to set it up, it would have to be monitored or just set up in the right way so that doesn't happen, because it could cause more issues than good.
Yeah, definitely having someone to moderate that space is important.
Yeah.
Apart from that, yeah, there's mental health services around Swinburne. George Level 4 is just like the health central basically. So they've got they have general practitioners, mental health nurses. There's no therapists or counsellors anymore. I was up there yesterday actually, and they told me that, which I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's for formal help, and then I think for informal, I do think the queer space and the women's space can be quite good. It obviously depends who's in there and like be respectful of people's wishes if they don't want to discuss something. I can't think of any other spaces.
Not in terms of, like decked out spaces designed for those purposes, but there are definitely a lot of clubs that are out there that will provide that sort of community space to allow people to have these kinds of discussions or find people to have those discussions with. So like Gender Agenda, we're gender diverse and trans advocacy group, essentially, and we like to inform and educate people as well as provide them with the resources that they need. But it can also be a space to have a discussion about some of these things or point them in the direction of that. Even when I was the vice president and president of Behind the Game, when we had a lot of issues and topics that have come up around the game development industry, which we're facing now at the moment, being able to properly talk about this to someone, even if they're not aware of the full issues, just being able to identify what those issues were, what can we do to sort of make it better in some way. That's why it's important to actually have those spaces incorporated in communities that are then moderated by someone to allow for a general wave of positivity to come through, but also to air feelings if need be in a safe environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it definitely helps where there are advocates from key voices that normalize this. Sometimes it's a matter of feeling that it's normal to share certain questions or certain queries, and that's where the community is built up as well. You find like-minded people that may have the answer, or they are able to point you to the right direction, which is important.
Good. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jared, Danny, Ivan. I don't have any more questions for you guys. It looks like we've covered a lot, covered it all. It is about 5 minutes before our scheduled end time, so I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
No worries.
Well, thanks for the session. Thanks to all the attendees for making it to this one as well. We hope it was meaningful and you got some good insight out of it. And yes, thank you again.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Thank you.